Hello and welcome tonight. We're going to be doing part 2 on toxic relationships. Tonight, we're specifically talking about sociopaths and psychopaths. Last week, we talked about narcissists. So this week, we're going to focus on the ones that are a little more dangerous and a little more difficult to deal with as a victim. So we're going to focus on quite a few areas on this, also how to identify them, and also what makes them the way they are. So I'm welcoming David Ellis again, who's a psychotherapist, and he is going to help us understand these people a little more, understand what they do to their victims, and a bit of what their victims can do to break free and then also heal, and various topics. So we'll get right into it. So, hello, David.
Hey, Lainey. Real nice to be back. How are you?
Good. Had a really good day.
Oh,
Beautiful outside.
we have an interesting topic tonight. That is the topic of psychopaths and sociopaths. And yeah, that's something that we absolutely need to address because the sociopath population has grown rapidly in the last 5 or so years. Okay. Now, a number of things have contributed to that. Reliance on social media. Social media does make one a narcissist. It does. And it's something that parents have to watch when you are raising children. But today, what we're going to be doing is getting into all the aspects of what makes a sociopath, what are the characteristics of a sociopath, and psychopath as well, and the things that you need to know when you're dealing with them, whether you just met them, whether you're in a relationship or a family situation with them. And let's say you got rid of a sociopath or a psychopath, what to expect from such an individual if it is that you are in a court situation, so to speak, where you have to represent yourself against these individuals. And so, what we want to do today is stick to the diagnostic construct when it comes to sociopaths and psychopaths. I'm not going to be straying too far away of it, too far away from it. What I'm going to be doing is specifically going through the characteristics, and these are the yardsticks that you will apply. You can't make a diagnosis just off the top of your head. You would have to know the individual. But what I'm going to do is make it very easy for people. I have queued 2 videos, and we're going to go through them characteristic by characteristic. If the individual only has one of those characteristics on either side, whether it be the psychopath or the sociopath side, then that person may just have a personality flaw. If they've had like more than half of them, then you may have a problem. Is that simple?
Yeah.
If they come in combination and the individual exhibits a bunch of these characteristics that we're talking about, then you definitely may have a problem. And that individual either needs to get some help or you need to get to running in the opposite direction, far away. Okay. And when Lainey and I said that these people are dangerous, we mean it. We really mean it. Now, Lainey comes from the more esoteric and spiritual side of things. I guess I also come from that side of things as well, even though I am a practicing psychotherapist now. What I would suggest that you guys do is, if you're watching this video and this video pertains to anybody that you know, please share the video so that people can actually see what we're talking about, because I'm sure everyone listening to this broadcast today knows at least one person who is affected by an individual such as this. It's it's rampant.
Right. And it's also really frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry for cutting you off, David. I thought you were having a break.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it is frustrating from an outside vantage of a friend or family member that sees someone in this situation and they struggle to, try and help these individuals that are under or in this kind of situation. So even if, you know, it doesn't apply to something happening in your life, it's really good knowledge to have to watch out for our friends and loved ones.
Yes, it is. It is very good knowledge to have, because when you see these characteristics, you may be able to avoid them when you see them. In some cases, you may be able to rationalize with these people, but most cases not. Okay? Depending on what their agenda is. So I suppose we should probably get into some definitions before we start, because these two psychological disorders come under a broad heading called ASPD, which is antisocial personality disorder. And what antisocial personality disorder is a sort of a broad umbrella that describes individual with sort of social sickness. They're at odds with the society around them. They're not necessarily aware that they're at odds with the society around them. Okay. They're just living their lives as far as they're concerned, right? It doesn't matter whether they're hurting people or not. They're just living their lives. That's how it works, okay? And so they share a lot of characteristics. And I want to say something here. Last week we did narcissists and manipulators. And I want to say that sociopaths and psychopaths are also narcissists. Some of them are, right? The main difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is that sociopaths tend to be more made by situation, and psychopaths, there's a genetic component which people think exists, right? It's not proven, it's a working theory, but there seems to be a genetic component to psychopathy, okay? Now, sociopathy occurs when in households where there's a lot of abuse, physical, emotional abuse, and it also occurs where there's a lot of addiction, abuse, or combination of either. Sociopaths are born out of households like these, okay? And so if a child is seeing the parents acting in ways which are antisocial, the child adopts these behavioral patterns to some degree or another, or at least the morality that goes with it. So let's say the child grows up in a household where the mother or the father are beating each other or fighting, or people are being hospitalized and stuff like that. Then the child learns that it's okay to do certain antisocial things, okay? And the child's morality is developed around that concept. Now, a lot of this stems from the fact that children watch and they learn. And what they learn can't be unlearned after a certain age. They can, but it's very difficult to. The child has to actually make an effort in the adult stage to make a change in their lives. But when you come to sociopaths, that rarely happens, because the truth of the matter is it's easy to be a sociopath. If you don't have to listen to any rules or anything like that, and you just do whatever the hell you want, then that's easy. And a lot of the times the child would have seen the parent do this, the parents do that, right? The psychopath, a lot of people try to describe the psychopath as born with something missing, okay? Like a moral code as an example, but there are significant differences between the sociopath and the psychopath. But the main difference is that sociopaths tend to come from extremely dysfunctional households, where there's sexual abuse, physical abuse, addiction, or combination of all of them. So our videos are going to go through them, and we're going to stick to the DSM-5 definitions, which are the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which psychiatrists use, and we're going to stick to the letter. So if you see someone you know exhibiting more than one of those behaviors, and we're going to give concrete examples there, right? Because lady, you would have met people in your practice who are sociopaths and psychopaths, and I certainly have met sociopaths and psychopaths throughout my entire career. So what I would like to do is go through these characteristics bit by bit, give you concrete examples, and then we will be sticking to the letter of the diagnosis. So what I want to do is probably share the video, but Lainey, I'll let you say what you need to say before we begin.
Yes, I again am very grateful for your wisdom on this. Like you'd said earlier, I kind of have this spiritual take on things and have worked with people and help people break free of this and deal with the trauma and the healing from that. So it's really a pleasure to have the psychological, actual information on this. So I think it's awesome that we found each other so that we can have this kind of symbiotic relationship and get these, help people in this way. So I'm looking forward to watching the video and seeing these characteristics.
Okay, I'm going to take us away. And I'm going to put the video on the screen. And we will pick up the video from here. And we'll be stopping the video to give you examples of the behavioral patterns we're talking about, okay?
Commonly classified as antisocial personality disorder, is characterized by behavior patterns that include manipulation, deceit, aggression, and lack of empathy. Sociopaths tend to engage in risky behavior and violate laws at the expense of themselves or others. These individuals may have a compromised moral compass and are usually perceived as unethical, immoral, and irresponsible. Despite the media's glamorization and inaccurate portrayal of sociopaths, most of them are not serial killers. They can be CEOs, lawyers, business owners, politicians, Wall Street traders, housewives, doctors. They could be anyone. So, here are 7 signs that someone you know may be a sociopath. Number 1. Sociopaths lack empathy. Antisocial personality disorder is categorized along with other personality disorders, such as borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. One defining trait is a lack of empathy. Typically, they do not feel any remorse or guilt, as they have trouble understanding other people's emotions. As a result, they may emotionally hurt those around them and have difficulty maintaining relationships. They can come across as cold, harsh, callous, and unfeeling. With training and therapy, it is possible for some people with ASPD to feel love and empathy. They usually develop empathy towards a select few, namely their children, parents, or partners. Number 2, they're manipulative. Sociopath.
Okay, so let's go over that. Empathy, lack of empathy. Now, sociopaths can exhibit a lack of empathy, but the smart ones, they actually learn how to fake empathy. So what happens? What does fake empathy look like? Fake empathy, actually, we could put each other on. I could put this back on screen so that the audience can see. Fake empathy looks like, I understand what you're going through. These are just words, however. Do they really understand what the other individual is going through? Right? So you can tell a sociopath if they've had a string of failed relationships, okay? So the reason why they would have a string of failed relationships is because, well, people can't stand them, or they do things to people, or they see people as targets. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. Or even the fake crocodile tears, right?
Yes, exactly. That's also a thing. They would cry as a means of gaining empathy from others. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with a sociopath, because crying and displaying large amounts of emotion, and that's later down actually in that character list, is actually one of the weapons that they use to control others. And let me just say that sociopaths, their main mission is to control, dominate, and to use. Okay? Let's move on.
Have a talent for manipulating others. They're opportunistic and highly ambitious individuals. As such, they rely on emotional or physical manipulation to get what they want. Some techniques that they use to manipulate others are gaslighting, lying, flattery, blame, and threats. Number 3, they are
Okay, so gaslighting, flattery, blame, and threats. If you are dealing with somebody, and I want you all to keep in mind as we go along, if the individual is demonstrating more than one of those traits or more than half of those traits, then you have a problem. So if you're dealing with an individual where if you have a disagreement, the go-to methodology is to threaten you, as an example, or soft threaten. A soft threat would be something along the lines of, I don't know. Give me a soft threat. I don't. A lot of people.
Well, I have one that calls to mind where it's, where it's kind of like a third party threat where, I could hurt you,
Yes,
or
yes.
someone else. I have a friend that could,
Do this or that. That is a third party
right?
threat. Okay, but when they started using threats or gaslighting, then that individual gaslighting, trying to make you think that that the way you see things is not the way that is. Now, I want to say something here about sociopaths, and we just want to take a little bit of a strip here. Remember that they come from dysfunctional households where threat was always part of their existence. Okay? So they take that behavioral pattern and they try to apply it to others. The point is that they would like to control the environment, control you. And the way they do this is because the reason why they do this is because they're massively insecure and they want to feel safe. Okay? And so whatever they went through when they were young, they don't want to feel that way anymore. And so what they do more often than not is that they try to control everybody they come into contact with, family members, friends, and whatever else. So they set up a reward and punishment system. The reward and punishment system is, if you do what I say, your life will be peaceful. But if you don't do what I say, then I will make your life a living hell. There are lots of people who do that. Okay? But when it's one characteristic, you can't necessarily diagnose necessarily or say this person is definitely a sociopath. But if they have a combination of these things, then you can absolutely, with reasonable, I wouldn't say certainty, because you still need a professional diagnosis, but you could reasonably say that that person has a problem, and it may be sociopathy. Okay, let's move on.
Charming. Charm is part of the game. Sociopaths use their charisma and charm to attract others, specifically those who are more vulnerable than themselves. They will feign concern or kindness to get people to believe them and establish a sense of trust. That way, it becomes easier to manipulate them. Number 4, sociopath.
Oh, the charm. Last week I said when we were dealing with narcissism, the narcissist will be the life of the party. Okay? And so what that looks like is the narcissist has, because they need the validation, they will be the life of the party for two reasons. They're massively insecure, so they need the validation that people love them. Okay? They won't, or they're like superior in some way, right? They may think that, okay, I'm smarter than you, or I'm more emotional than you. I understand emotion better, or I understand this better than you, and stuff like that. And they need it. And so being charming is part of this act. So they will engage people and say, I'm the life of the party. I want everybody to have fun. But that belies a massive insecurity that they have inside. And I'm sure everybody who went to high school or whatever else would have met at least somebody who was like, oh, this person is so fun, this person is so this. But you don't know what happens to that person when they're alone at home. Okay, that person can be the most insecure person that you've ever met. Okay, so when you see somebody desperately trying to look for attention in any which way, trying to say, "Hey, look at me, see, I'm here."
Mhm.
That person is insecure, and that person definitely has an issue. But if you see the other characteristics, then you might want to be cautious. Okay.
Yeah, and again, it stems from what they were lacking in childhood or what they were exposed to. So because they never got that nurturing, that attention, were, like you said, raised in maybe addiction, violence, different things like this, it is the damage that's showing itself, where they're trying to have some sense of control because they didn't have that control before.
Yes, and they are powerless. They feel powerless. A lot of them have no power. They felt no power in childhood because when things were going on around them, there's nothing that they could do about it. And so to a certain extent, in their beginning stages, the parents are to blame for the way they turned out. You could make that argument, absolutely. But when you cross over the age of 18, you are absolutely in charge of your own life and you can choose. You can make the choice, right? Because sociopaths generally know that there's something wrong with them. But the choice to actually do something about your insecurities it's easier just to be a sociopath, because a sociopath doesn't play by anybody's rules. They will do whatever they want. Okay? And come on, that's an easier existence for most people.
Right.
I don't have
Right.
to listen to
And then having that blame, right? Like, it's not my fault I'm this way. It's because of XYZ that happened to me. So there's not any like really accountability for what they're doing either.
So I have a case that I dealt with some years ago where the sociopath was aware that the mother and the father were guilty, okay? And was soft torturing these people, right? Specifically because she knew that they were guilty for what they exposed their kids to when they were young. And so, because the parents are guilty, they're never going to call the sociopath out on anything. They're not going to call, like, the sociopath can do no wrong, as an example. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Because they're
'Cause
guilty.
that would mean that they'd have to look at themselves.
And yeah, and nobody wants to do that unless it comes to a confluence point. Okay, but we can move on. This is sociopaths.
Are ill-tempered and impulsive. Though those with ASPD usually resort to manipulation, they are also more impulsive and ill-tempered. They're prone to engaging in risky and illegal behavior at the expense of themselves or others. Different factors affect the development of this trait, but being around people who encourage and condone violence make it more likely for someone with ASPD to be violent themselves. Exposure to domestic abuse and animal cruelty are some early manifestations of violent behavior in a person who has ASPD. Number 5.
So that's proving what we just said. Okay, so now a sociopath does not obey any rules. So I'll give you an example of a running example of what a sociopath doesn't think that the rules apply to them. So for those of you who grew up with brothers and sisters who do wrong things and they want you to participate in it, as an example, they don't think the rules apply to them, but if you are around them, they want to soften your moral compass as well. So how does that work? If you are, let's say you went out with a sociopath to the movies, as an example, right? I'm going to use a sort of Regina type example. And the sociopath says to you, we paid for the one movie, but if we stay in here, we could go see another movie. Well, that's wrong, theoretically. It's against your moral compass, right? But the sociopath will reason with you and say, well, everybody does that. It's not a big deal. Everybody does it. And if you don't do it, you don't want to necessarily engage in fun. So they try to make you think that you're not a fun person. Now, the truth is that probably in movie theaters all over Canada, people do that, right? But they're usually 17 years old, 16 years old. If you're doing that at 40, 50, and 60, then yeah, your moral compass has an issue. The sociopath will be the kind of person that will say, oh, see a bunch of trespass signs and go right through them.
Yep, or drink and drive, or, you know, things like that.
The rules don't apply to them. The rules don't apply to them. Okay. And so if you see somebody, let's say, okay, the issue with the cinema may be one issue, but if you see multiple issues where that person does not obey the rules of society, normal rules of society, even in like communication, a sociopath does not feel like if you give them the opportunity to speak and speak their mind, they're not going to give you the opportunity to speak. So those of you who are in relationships where you don't feel like people are allowing you to speak, yeah, you might have an issue there. Okay. They don't obey the rules of normal relationships. So a sociopath will cheat on you, as an example. Most sociopaths cheat. They don't see anything wrong with it. The rules don't apply to them. They apply to other people. You understand that?
Yep.
They apply to other people. And the thing about it is that if you call a sociopath out on a certain behavioral pattern, you're wasting your time, because they will have a justification ready as to why it is they acted in a disgusting manner or they harmed someone. There's always a reason why. Okay. But the truth of the matter is that there is no real justification for harming people. There isn't. And so you calling out a sociopath is kind of like wasting your time, because the rules don't apply to me. And if I did break the rules, it's because I had a really good reason why I should.
Yep.
And if everything fails and I'm dead wrong, my upbringing and my mommy and my daddy made me do it. It's amazing.
Yep.
Let's go. It's amazing.
It is.
Relationships. If a sociopath manages to establish a relationship, they will most likely be very possessive over the other person, especially if it's a romantic relationship. Sociopaths see people as a means to an end, whether it's to glean information from, or for emotional fulfillment, or for money. They use people to obtain something and feel threatened when someone tries to insert themselves. Number 6, they're narcissistic.
Goes without saying. I have to say that men fit into this category. A lot of men fit into this category. Okay, where they try to possess women and so on. But women are also in this category. A sociopath does not want you to experience any kind of joy without them.
Yeah. And I thought what was specific there too was the financial aspect of it, having control over the finances. Because I know of someone that was with someone, and it was a he in this case, but like you said, it can be a he or a she that is a sociopath, had access to her banking information, her social insurance number, all of that kind of stuff. She did not have access to his. He would transfer amounts of money out of her account into his account. He would fill out credit card loans for her. He would phone and start loans for vehicles, and then guilt her into following through. And so that's an aspect of it too, where they control your finances, where you're not allowed to even sometimes have access to your own finances. They're in control. Your money is their money. There is no, my money is your money. It's very one-sided and need and all input. I need, and they take. And they will leave you in financial ruin as well as emotional ruin.
Yep. And this is stuff that happens every day to a bunch of people. But as we said earlier, if an individual exhibits, we're at number what? I'm not quite sure what number we're at. But if you see those signs on an individual, then you know that you might be dealing with a sociopath, and you can absolutely rationalize with some of them, but most of them probably not. Okay. Now, a sociopath generally knows that there's something wrong, and this next characteristic will explain better.
ASPD can occur with other personality disorders, namely narcissism. It's important to note that not all narcissists are sociopaths, but most sociopaths can be narcissists. Sociopaths develop a superiority complex and use this complex to justify the way they treat others. Because sociopaths do not feel remorse, they do not normally apologize. And number 7, they find enjoyment in other.
All right, so we did narcissists for the whole of last week. Now, narcissists are a particular brand of individual where the superiority complex blinds them from any kind of rational discussion. Okay? If you said to a narcissist, you're a narcissist, the narcissist will take offense. They won't try to see your point. Or if they see your point, they will ignore your point. So we want to talk about the confrontation of these people in a little bit, and whether it's a good idea or whether it's not a good idea. So they're narcissistic. They believe that they're superior in some way. So, and I'll explain to you why that's important, because superiority generally tends to suggest that I'm not helpless. And they're still dealing in the child stage where they were helpless and seeing a bunch of stuff happening around them. But narcissists generally stay in the child stage, and so now they want to be superior in some way. They want people to look up to them because they need the validation, because if without the validation, then there is nothing. Now, here's the really sad thing about them. If you are a narcissist and you don't have a lot of other stuff going for you, you will pick one thing and go with that one thing, right? So for a lot of people, like I said last week, it's their spirituality. Okay, so they think that, well, I am spiritual, I feel things bigger and better, and they use it as an excuse to do wrong things to people. It's amazing, right? It's hilarious. And I said that quite a lot of spiritual people have fallen into narcissism. All right, and lady, I know this is completely, it's my community too, it's your community, right? But the truth of the matter is you have a bunch of people that are out there that are saying that certain things that they do are right when they are plainly wrong, but they are right because I see things in a wider, bigger perspective than you do. So like the goal,
or they, like you said, they have, you know, kind of one thing going for them, like say a talent or something, and they use that talent to put themselves center of attention. And then, you know, if I happen to cheat, well, it's because I'm so great at this talent and I'm the center of attention. So I guess I allowed that to, you know, that made me cheat, right?
yes.
So there's that kind of rationalization too, right?
It could be something basic like like sex, as an example, right? Like I'm more sexy than someone else. No, you're not more sexy than someone else. It's just sex, right? So a narcissist would not put in the work to, if you have a superiority it's not like a narcissist is going to go to like any lengths to develop themselves that kind of way, because they already know that they're superior and they don't need, as inverted commas, to prove anything because they know that they're superior. Now, when you are dealing with that kind of configuration of an individual, they will be particularly insecure about other people who they feel may be superior to them in some way. So let's say someone who's a professor in a university gets involved with a narcissist who believes that they have, I don't know, a great emotional, they hug trees or something, this great emotional connection. That individual, the great emotional connection, will see the banker get up or the professor get up, go to their job, be great at their job and feel insecure as a result of it and want to tear that person down. So if you are in that kind of situation, whether it be a brother, a sister, a spouse, or whatever else, where an individual is constantly telling you that you are not good at this and not good at that, and they're interrupting your joy, so to speak, of just being who you are, then that person is definitely has an issue, probably a narcissist, and most likely a sociopath. Okay, but the issue is clear. The issue is clear. They don't want you to experience joy or any kind of connection with nature or human beings without them being part of it.
Right.
Insecurity. Okay?
Yeah, they have to have that superiority. So if you show any signs of having individuality or, you know, any kind of joy, like you said, then they have to tear that down and put you back in your place.
Yes, or they would interrupt you. Like, let's say you went out to dinner with a sociopath, as an example, and you're eating a wonderful meal, and then you're like elated, right? Because the meal is so wonderful and so on. A sociopath will interrupt that and say, "Excuse me, stop." They will just interrupt it, right? They will interrupt it somehow, or like, "Why are you acting this way? Have you never eaten, I don't know, fries?"
They belittle you and make it uncomfortable because they don't like to see you have that happiness or that enjoyment. They have to steal it away.
Yes, and it's not just you. So you don't have to take it personal. A sociopath will do that to everybody. The sociopath will be the person that is at a table with a bunch of people and will bring up a topic that she or he knows is uncomfortable for people around that table. Because once you get people uncomfortable, then you have them on the back foot, so to speak, because it's edgy. And then you might call the individual to task, and the individual says, "Well, I'm doing it because people just need to grow." Another spiritual.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important too, like you were saying, because we kind of muddled things together a little bit, that not all narcissists are sociopaths. Again,
Correct.
right? We're focusing a little bit on the narcissism, but don't mix those two together while we're talking and think that if you're a narcissist, you're automatically a sociopath. It's just that all sociopaths are narcissists. So that's why we're focusing in more again on the traits of narcissists, because they have that as a layer of this.
So I'll tell you what the difference is, and in terms of a narcissist and a sociopath right away, and it's a very subtle difference. A narcissist will do these things, and if you don't comply, it'll be there will be something. A sociopath will punish you definitively.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last one here.
Suffering. Though individuals with antisocial personality disorder do not show empathy, there are some rare exceptions. Sadistic antisocials use empathy to experience their target's suffering and to derive pleasure from it. Do any of these signs describe someone you know? Let us know down in the comments.
Okay, so what we see here is that what I said earlier on, they can actually mimic empathy for others as a means of causing harm to them. Okay. And how that works is, as an example, let's say a sociopath cheats on you in a relationship. And men do this a lot, actually. There's a lot of men who do this as a tactic. But as I said, one characteristic doesn't necessarily make a sociopath. They will cheat on you and then they will cry about it. How about not doing it? Like they're more hurt than you, that they've hurt you. It's hilarious. Actually, it's actually hilarious to look at. And this is not something that is worth laughing at.
No, I didn't laugh at it because I've gone through that.
Sorry. I'm sorry, lady. They will cheat on their partners, and they will be more hurt than their partners, that they cheat on their partners. Like,
so what the hell? Yeah, you as the one who's been cheated on are comforting them, right?
Yes, like it's okay. Yeah, and that's once you see those kinds of traits, you know that there's something wrong with that individual. The individual absolutely needs to do something about themselves. But as I said, it is easy to be, that's the easy road. It's easy to be a sociopath. It's harder to stand, inverted commas, in your own power, claim your life as your own, say the past or whatever happened with my parents or whatever happened in my family is the past, and rise above it. That's hard to do. It's
Right.
easy to just say the rules don't apply to me because I've been through this and I will do whatever I want to whoever I want.
Right.
Big
Because there are
problem.
a lot of people who have grown up in abusive, like whether it's physical, sexual abuse, drugs, alcohol, violence, that kind of upbringing where, it is the prime breeding ground for a sociopath. But they come out of it differently. And that's something that I've wondered a lot, is how does someone who goes through the same thing, you can have two individuals go through the exact same experiences as a child, and one will take the path where I am never ever going to be like that in my life. I am going to do better. And then you have the opposite where, well, I'm a victim. I had XYZ happen to me as a child, so I have an excuse for the rest of my life to treat others inferior or however I please, right? In all the things. So there are people, like you can't, that's another thing. We don't want to label people just because someone's had a horrible upbringing. There are people that for some reason have that fortitude to be able to rise above that and better themselves, use it as a stepping stone to learn and rise up their vibration to something higher than how they were raised.
Yes, so I said that we're sticking to the diagnostic definition. So you are absolutely correct. We can't all come from perfect households or functional households, right? But people, and as I said, it's up to the sociopath. If you crossed over the age of 18, you are absolutely responsible for your actions in this world and how you impact others. So in the Western world, we go by the basic tenet, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Yeah, no, that doesn't apply to sociopaths who are conditioned sociopaths. And then there are people who understand this, okay, and they choose to do something different. They choose to be better, as you've said, and they decide, you know what, I'm not going to live my life going around disrespecting people and harming people. I'm just not going to do that. So what makes the difference? The difference, I suspect, has to do with a number of factors. Did the individual meet someone who put them on a different path? Some people meet people who change their lives, and some people are not that lucky and just decide that, you know what, I don't have to give a shit about society, okay? And so what they will do is that they will just go around and everybody they meet, they toxify. And it doesn't occur to them that this kind of behavior is not good behavior. And the whole rule about do unto others as you would have them do unto you, yeah, no, they don't respect that. That's the rule of morality called the golden rule that we live on in the Western world. Okay? No, the sociopath and the psychopath live on the rule of do unto others before they do unto you. Okay? And so it's hilarious to watch the way they rationalize some stuff. You want to go into psychopathy right away, Lainey?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, and then I will kind of take my, like what we were talking about earlier, kind of the spiritual aspect of like from that side of some of the characteristics and reasons and whatnot.
And if you guys have any questions, just drop them on the page. We're going to try to answer them. Okay? And so let's begin with the 8 signs you're dealing with a psychopath.
1. They lack empathy. According to research at Duke University, cognitive deficits prevent psychopaths from experiencing automatic empathy, the ability to interpret other people's perspectives subconsciously, even when there is no personal need to do so. However, psychopaths still experience controlled empathy, the ability to understand how someone is feeling by consciously considering that person's actions and reactions and reasoning through their thoughts and feelings. If someone never reacts to others' tears, joy, or fear unless it directly affects their goals, they might harbor psychopathic tendencies. 2.
So let me just be short here because I want to pay attention to time. So basically, psychopaths understand empathy by looking at your reactions. So if I say to you something hurtful and I look at your reactions, Lainey, and then I learn from your reactions, that when I say this is the stimuli of, this is how they learn empathy. It's not something that they feel. It's something that they can, it's like a scientific process to them.
It's
And
like
you're
a
the lab rat.
mimicking. It's a mimicking too.
Yep. And you're the lab rat, really. And everybody around them. So it's like everybody around them might as well be rats in a lab. Yeah.
They don't feel guilty. Lack of remorse is one of the telltale signs of psychopathy. Due to their decreased automatic empathy, psychopaths don't process care-based transgressions, where one person harms another, as morally wrong. This lack of guilt often correlates to violent, illegal, or unethical behavior. As described in a study, a psychopath might be someone who embezzled clients' hard-earned savings without remorse. On average, are 3 times more likely to reoffend than people who are not psychopathic. 3.
Self-explanatory. But also sociopaths, they don't feel guilt in the normal way. The way a sociopath well, actually a sociopath doesn't have to feel guilty because they have an excuse as to why they've committed an offense, right? So let's go on.
They are charismatic. Psychopaths often mimic others' behaviors in order to get what they want, sometimes adopting completely different personalities. This process is called reverse learning because instead of reacting to external stimuli, psychopaths learn how to act based on people's reactions to their behavior. So, if you catch someone acting instead of reacting, it could be a sign of a psychopath.
Wow. You see somebody switching personalities, and I don't mean in the case of like schizophrenia, okay, or any kind of mental disorder like that. I mean switching personalities as in one environment they're one way, in another environment they're another way, and it's so seamless. Then you know, yeah, that's an indicator that something is wrong.
4. They are fake or manipulative.
Oh.
Another sign you're dealing with a psychopath is if they suddenly undergo shifts in personality and behavior, turning from charming and outgoing to threatening or violent, for example. This is known as extinction, and a study by Blair in 2018 explains that it happens when people are no longer rewarding one of the psychopath's behaviors. They will then try a different tactic to try and manipulate you into giving them what they want. 5.
Yeah, you gotta watch psychopaths. Now, a sociopath will be ill-tempered, and I'm showing you the differences now. A sociopath will be ill-tempered, as in you don't do something that they want, or you're not giving them what they want, and they will lose their freaking minds. They will shout at the top of their voices. They cannot control their emotions. But do they get violent? No. But a psychopath will, because your level of pain is not the psychopath's problem. So that's a big difference.
5. They lie constantly. Psychopaths use lies to get what they want. Since they don't naturally experience empathy or guilt, people on the psychopathic spectrum are more likely to view lying as a tool than a moral exception. Additionally, research suggests that psychopaths are better able to detect lies, although this trait appears in psychopathic men more than women. 6. They are
Okay, so lies can be something simple like they lie without, if you meet somebody who lies with no reason, it's just a tool. They're just practicing.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like
And the aim is the destruction. I want to say something here. Psychopaths also lie to themselves, okay? They also lie to themselves. As hard as that, and that is the most dangerous thing because they believe their own hype.
Irresponsible. Psychopathy is synonymous with irresponsibility. Their cognitive deficits in empathy mean that psychopaths are almost always centered around their personal goals and will sometimes do whatever it takes to achieve them, including breaking their promises. Coupled with their lack of guilt and moral responsibility to others, it is unsurprising that psychopaths are not the most reliable. 7.
So they're irresponsible. You can't rely on them a lot of the times. I see you nodding there, Eleni.
Yep.
We're going to talk
They
about that, aren't
They
we?
have, yeah, I know. There's like I'm taking notes here. But they also have trouble for that reason holding down a job or a driver's license or
Mhm.
anything, right? Because, and then again, it's the go-to of blaming why they're, so hard done by and they need this and they need that. And then that comes into the financial abuse because they don't have a job, and they don't have a job because, right? Like it just carries on and on and on. So not only are they not responsible for things and end up losing jobs and losing income and losing licenses or whatever, they also have a backup as to why, so that they can play the victim for their own lack of responsibility.
Agreed.
You for their mistakes. Although psychopaths lack remorse, when confronted with things they've done wrong, they may blame you. Why? Because they probably won't take the time to think through how placing the blame on you will make you feel the same way they do at the moment. Instead, they use you as a scapegoat in an attempt to relieve the discomfort and anger they are experiencing. 8. They are impulsive.
Okay, so I'm sure all of you have probably met someone like that. You tell them, look, you are wrong because of A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. I say, no, it's because of you that I did something wrong. No, you did something wrong because you're an adult and you have a cognitive faculty and you made the decision to do wrong stuff.
Right.
So both sociopaths and psychopaths share that trait. I should say this. So let's say, I said earlier, a sociopath or a psychopath will cheat on you and cry about it. On the other hand, they'll blame you. You were the one who made me cheat on you.
Yep.
Why? Because, I don't know, you use, what is it, Crest as opposed to Colgate. So
Right.
I just couldn't handle it anymore, so I had to cheat on it. These are the kinds of arguments that they come up with to justify their behaviors. And if you are a rational thinking person, you begin to think, am I crazy? Or is me using Colgate not a good excuse for doing stupid stuff, right?
Right. I have an even better example of the whole blaming thing. I know of a case where an individual, and I was telling you about this before, actually threw ice cream on a 2-year-old in a car seat in a car in a fit of rage. A 2-year-old, the mother put the 2-year-old in the car seat and asked her if she wanted her ice cream. She said no. She put it down and she got in to drive because this individual doesn't have a driver's license. And then, of course, the 2-year-old started crying for the ice cream. So she said, could you please just grab it? It's right beside you. And so he got really mad. Why don't you do it? You lazy, blah, blah, blah. She went to get out to go and do it herself. He got out, picked up the ice cream, opened the child's door, threw it all over the 2-year-old very angrily, slammed the door, went back and sat in the passenger seat, slammed the door. And then her response was like, what the heck? Like, why would you do that? The 2-year-old screaming, right? Has ice cream all over. But it was her fault because she was lazy and she should have done it herself, right? So had a temper tantrum, took it out on a child, then twisted it around that it was your fault. You made me do that because if you would have done it yourself and not asked me to, that wouldn't have happened. Then afterwards, twists the story, telling her, well, the velocity that I close my door compared to the velocity that you close your door on your car is different, and goes into this scientific explanation of why it may have appeared that he was angry, but he really indeed was not, and kind of repaint the whole story over and over into her head, and basically making her feel stupid because you don't understand science like I do, and velocity and force equaling whatever, right? So it can get more than just Colgate toothpaste and Crest, right? Like it can be to the point where they will do something really horrible, blame you for it, shift the blame, and then reprogram you as to what actually happened and how it was actually your fault, not their fault.
And meanwhile, there's a 2-year-old screaming in the back when all this rationalization is going on, and they're making the next generation of psychopaths/sociopath. These people are disgusting, yeah? Because when you become a parent, it is your job to protect your child. I need to, like, sometimes I have to repeat this to individuals over and over again. I'm going to say this again. When you become a parent, it is your job to protect your child. You have no excuses for exposing your children to any kind of horror that you can avoid. I've met a lot of people in my office who says, well, she did the best she could. Oh, I did the best I could. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And so sometimes when people say this stuff, is like, I did the best I could. What does that mean? If you are raising children and your house is abusive, I don't care if you have no money. I don't care whether you have nowhere to go and so on. Find a way and get the children out of that situation. The children did not ask to be there. Get up and leave. You brought them into the world. They are your responsibility. Well, until they're 18 at least. And so you must get the children out of that situation. But a lot of people fail to do so. And I'm not only talking about the women, I'm talking about men as well. They have no clue that this is not right. And then we go back to the golden rule. If you were a kid, you wouldn't want to be exposed to that kind of situation. Why did you bring kids into the world and exposing them to that kind of situation? There are no excuses for that. But as I said, you can't explain that to people.
No.
But this is the last one here, so we're going to get into discussion.
Another giveaway that someone may be a psychopath is impulsivity or high levels of risk-taking. Do they repeatedly break laws for fun, or because they don't feel compelled to uphold society's moral standards? Are they frequently engaged in reckless driving or drug use without fear? These are examples of behaviors that could be due to psychopathy. Because impulsivity is also a sign of other personality disorders, bipolar disorder, or ADHD, it's important to consider this sign's presence alongside other signs on this list. Hence, it requires a detailed professional.
All right, so I'm going to remove the screen, and we're going to get into a discussion here, picking up from where we left off. The parents of sociopaths and psychopaths have a particular duty that they need to take into consideration. If you are a parent and your child is being exposed to violence of any kind, you'll have a responsibility to protect that child. You have no excuses for not doing so. You don't, but that is something that's hard to explain to people. If you are a child who has grown up in a dysfunctional household and you have crossed over the age of 18, you have a responsibility to fix yourself. I have met in my office people who go hop from counselor and healer and counselor and healer and counselor and healer. And the only reason why they do that is because when they reach a point where the healer or counselor is telling them things that is inconvenient, they move to another one.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is that I tell them what is inconvenient first of all. Like this, and we want to talk about how to deal with sociopaths and psychopaths at different stages of a relationship. And then, Lainey, I want to hear the spiritual side of this as well, because that's very important and very interesting. So if you have just met a sociopath and you're at the beginning stages of a friendship or business partnership or whatever else, the first thing that I would suggest confrontation is indicated here, I would think. You say to the individual, I know what you are. I know you are a psychopath or no, not psychopath. Psychopaths are dangerous, really dangerous. I know you're a sociopath. I know that you've had victims before. I am not one of your victims. I am not one of your victims. If you intend, because here's the thing about it, you're going to meet sociopaths in business. The business schools train sociopaths. You say to the sociopath, I know what you are. I know how you are. You've had victims before. I am not one of your victims. You say that. And then you decide whether or not you are proceeding with whatever arrangement you have with that person. If you are in a relationship with a sociopath, I want to say to you that confronting a sociopath or a psychopath is not indicated while you're in the relationship necessarily. For the sociopath, it is not indicated because no matter what you tell that sociopath, it doesn't matter what you say. It does not matter whether what you say is rational. The sociopath will have a reason why you are wrong or why you don't see it right. The sociopath doesn't have to listen to you. For the psychopath, you confronting them would be an affront to themselves, and they're going to hurt you. Sociopaths are going to hurt you emotionally more often than not. Psychopaths are going to hurt you and try to destroy your lives. That's how it works. If you have gotten out of a relationship, and I could help a lot of you here who are dealing with sociopaths and psychopaths in court, because I am legally trained as well. If you are dealing with a sociopath and a psychopath in court, what you absolutely need to do is document everything that happens. So in the case that you're talking about, the where, when, why, and how things happen, document it, write it down. Because you guys are going to end up in court, and what happens to a lot of, I'll give you an example. I have done some arbitration, not family arbitration, but I've audited family arbitration cases and seen them. And what happens is that a man, usually it's a man, abuses a woman from now until doomsday. They end up in family arbitration or court. And what happens is that the woman comes in all flustered. She tries to present her case, and the judge or the arbitrator or the arbitral tribunal looks at her and is like, you seem really flustered. You don't know what you're talking about. Do you understand? And the sociopath or the psychopath is cool, calm, and collected, and is presenting his case and making the woman look like she's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The judge is not necessarily psychologically trained. A good judge or a good arbitrator will say, well, I need you guys to go to counseling so I can get a professional opinion. But that rarely happens a lot of the times. And so women are usually quite hard done by the court system. Okay, men as well. But it's usually, it goes the other way, right? Because the woman comes in emotional. She's talking a bunch of stuff. She's not necessarily versed on the law. And whether she has a representative or not, the opposing legal counsel will try to tear that woman apart on a stand. So to leave a sociopath or a psychopath, sometimes you have to become the sociopath and psychopath to deal with them. You absolutely do sometimes. Or else they will not, or else you will end up a loser and your life will be in shambles.
Yep.
from the spiritual perspective, you were giving me a very interesting perspective earlier on. I can't wait to hear this, lady. Floor is yours.
All right. So with what I do as I look at things from an energy level as a spirit being, our higher self level. So when you're talking about someone that has these kind of characteristics and traits, you know, you might brand them a certain way as evil or, you know, darkness or, you know, that kind of thing. So earlier today, like, and I've done early, I've had other, I guess you could say, channelings and different things in regards to this. But earlier today, what sort of more came to me was that these people, we have our main 7 chakra energy points, right? And we all, as spirits, incarnate in human form on the earth. So what I was kind of enlightened is that these ones are beings that are just starting their incarnation on earth. They are still very much operating kind of almost on animal instincts, where they are in their root chakra, which is all about survival. It is about the pleasures. It's about shelter. It's about your needs, sex, just, you know, pleasure. It's about shelter, your basic fundamental needs, and your survival instincts is what the root chakra is. So it's the fight and flight. It's the response like that, which makes sense with what you were saying, because these people are stuck in that root, that child. It's the nurturing that nurtures that root, right? So it's just like with plants. When you plant a seedling, the roots have to take effect, and then it grows up from there. So when we start on our path as a spiritual being in this physical human reality, we start in the root. So if you experience major trauma, like a sociopath would, of violence, alcoholism, drug use, these kinds of things, they do not get past that root. Their roots have not been nurtured. That root chakra has not been developed and nurtured. And so these people are kind of stuck in that root. They are stunted in their growth. They are stuck in the root chakra. The other chakras, as you move up into them, has more to do with your emotional. The root is input. Roots only draw in. They draw in what they need for life, for sustenance, for pleasure, right? As a human being. So what happens with these people on a spirit level is that they get kind of stunted in their spiritual growth, where they are stuck at that level at a lower vibration. As we go up in the chakras, up to our crown chakra, our vibration as a being increases as well. Just like you would, like with the thermometer, it goes up, right? That keeps going up. Your vibration goes up. So you might almost think, like I said at the outset, where you look at these people as evil or possessed even. They do. They can seem like they are possessed. Like you were talking earlier, how they can just flip moods or even almost like personalities and be a completely different person. You know, it kind of gives you that feeling. So because they're in this lower vibration, they do have a tendency, there are negative energies and negative beings out there that, because they're at such a low vibration, a low frequency, that they are used somewhat unbeknownst by them by lower level energies and negative entities.
That's very interesting, because that's why when people resonate at a higher frequency, it bugs them.
Yep. And
I get it.
also, right, because they're at that lower frequency, they're attracted to that higher frequency in the sense that they need to absorb. They need that nourishment. They need someone to be feeding that root chakra. They can't do it on their own. They're stuck on sucking. They're in the root stage where they are in survival. They're clinging on to people in survival states, right? It's all about their needs, what they need, and they don't, like an infant, right? When an infant is newly born, it is all about their needs. There is no empathy. There is no, oh, I'm sorry I woke you up, mom. You know, it's I'm screaming because I'm hungry. I crap myself. You know, I'm tired. I need a bath. Right? It's very much that need. There is no empathy from a baby. You can't sit there and explain to a newborn that, you know, mommy's tired and mommy has needs too. Right? They don't get it. So that's because all infants are born in that root, that nurturing chakra, right? The other chakras haven't formed yet. So that's where a sociopath, right, never got that nurturing. So it's not saying that someone who's a sociopath cannot improve themselves. People can go past that root chakra and learn to work through their other chakras and their other things and spiritually develop themselves and develop as a physical human being as well. The physical body will grow no matter what and mature. Our spirit body, our chakras, only grow through nurturing and care and taking care of those energies in our body. So that's the part about the spiritual part of it, where they are almost in that animal instinct, that survival, that baby instinct, where it's all about, what are you doing for me? There is no empathy. There is no understanding of what they're doing and how it affects you.
Okay, so I have questions. Of course, I have questions. So, what happens when they thinking that they're resonating on a higher vibrational levels, or they put it out there that they're resonating on higher vibrational levels, but then they steal joy from other people? I see what you're saying about the base chakra, because a lot of these people, they utilize their bodies or sexuality as a way to find people, to siphon energy off of people, so to speak, all puns intended. But what happens when they think that they're resonating higher, but they're actually not?
I think that's just part of that mimicking, right? If I take you back to the instance of a baby, or, you know, those even animal instincts, they have the instinct to be able to mimic, right? So even as a child starts to develop, they will mimic things. It isn't that they, like, even if they say mama or dada, right, and they start to have vocabulary, do they know what mama or dada means? It's simply mimicking vowels and sounds and different things like that, right? I hate to use, like, you know, a baby in comparison with a sociopath, but that is like where they will portray themselves. And that's where, yeah, they're way smarter than a baby. They have learned how to really manipulate to get what they want, right? That's where the manipulation comes in. As a baby develops, they will start to manipulate you as a parent, right? That's why we have the terrible twos, where it is all about them, and they will throw fits and they will throw tantrums and they will do things on purpose to, you know, get their way. So it's similar in that way, where you see the various levels of development in that root chakra, where they will mimic, they will pretend to be a certain thing, they will manipulate, they will, you know, do these lower level things, not only in physical human development, but also on a spiritual level, but then make themselves look like they are indeed a higher level than they really are. But it's all part of the manipulation to get what they want for their basic survival needs. Oh, I think you're muted or something there, David.
Understood. Excellent. I really, that really does explain a lot to me in terms of the spiritual aspect. What about psychopaths that have that genetic component?
And that's something that I have kind of wondered myself. Because with the sociopath, you can see the reasoning behind. You can see that they didn't get that nurturing. They didn't get, their roots. They didn't get the nurturing, the protection, the security, the upbringing. They were not safe as a child. So you can see where that would stunt someone's growth. Psychopathy is like when you were saying before that it is something genetic, that resonates as true with me. I know scientifically that hasn't been proven, but I do think that it is something that is just, it's more of a physical brain type response where something didn't quite form right in the emotional response of the brain, in the part of the brain that is responsible for empathy, that is responsible for those emotional responses. That's my take on it from what I get from a spiritual standpoint.
Do you think that there's a karmic load on them when they come into this life? Because they are destroyers. That's what psychopaths do. They destroy things.
Yep. And they can have parents that are peachy keen, the picturesque television version of the perfect parents. And then you have this kid that has like no emotion, is hurting animals, is doing all kinds of things that are just, unfounded. There's no reason for it.
And yeah, there's a reason why I asked that question, because I have a friend and she has a twin and a boy, and this friend is a devout Christian. If you met this woman, she doesn't even speak loud, okay? But the children, wow. And I spoke to her recently, and she's had the police call to her house like 21 times between last October and now, because the kid, the 9-year-old, he's 9 years old and he is full on. He is not halfway. He's been to the psych ward 3 times, and the people in the psych ward are afraid of this boy. Everybody on that street is afraid of that boy. So I don't, and if you ask, okay, so it might be the father, but I've met the father. The father is, for want of a better word, a couch potato. Like he doesn't have anything going on that smacks of anything that is dysfunctional. 2 very functional parents, and this kid came out like full on. He is violent. He will do anything, and he has a temper out of this world, and he hurts children. He went after a teacher with a pair of scissors, and when the social worker was brought in, the social worker ended up in a headlock. I like, wow. I'm like, and this woman is the epitome of everything that is good and Christian. I mean, like, I speak to her every once in a while. I make it my duty to go look her up and stuff like that and find out how she's doing and so on. And on one occasion, she ended up in the psych ward, and she said, "This was the best time of my life. This is the most rest that I ever got." So these things, these things are real things. So I wanted to, like, there's nothing in the DSM-5, DSM-4 that can explain those things. So I guess I'm gonna have to ask you, explain this to me. I have no clue. This child is growing up in a functional household. Okay, so I have no idea. I can't help you there.
Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit when you were talking about karmic life paths. So like I explained to a lot of people, we kind of have our souls, we have our soul family from source. So when we decide to come to earth in a human body and experience this human experience on this physical dimension and plane and realm, it is a decision that we make as soul, right? So when we decide, okay, I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna you know, basically Earth is kind of like a big schoolyard, a playground where souls from source can learn lessons. The bad part is that usually we forget that when we incarnate, right? It rarely will see children that have these memories of past lives or are more connected to source still as an infant. But, you know, it calls to question, like, especially when you look at it from a mother's standpoint, say a child gets cancer. Why does that child have cancer? Why would a soul choose to go through that? Why would a soul choose to be such a short amount of time, right? Or a psychopath, right? So there is a reason that the soul, either for karmic lessons that you need to learn, has chosen that specific physical makeup in that human body to go through that, because they need to learn something as a soul, as a spirit. So that's the only thing that I can wrap my mind around, because I mean, just as like I'm saying that being a psychopath is something that is a physical, to me it is something physical. Sociopath is learned. It's the same as a child that's born blind or without limbs or with cancer or any kind of situation where they are affected physically. So to me, psychopathy falls in that same boat where, for whatever reason, that soul took on that contract, that lesson, to be incarnated in that kind of situation. So it can be past karma that you're working out. It can be whatever you needed to learn. Or maybe you were just bored as a soul and thought, hey, that looks like fun, right? Like, for whatever reason, people will choose from a soul reason, of a soul level, to experience these things. So that's one aspect of why it could be that. The other is that we are all on this planet together learning from each other. So that's why before, when I talk about a narcissist and an empath, we are all learning off of each other. There has to be someone to teach us the lessons that we need to learn. And someone who is a narcissist or a sociopath, unfortunately, the victims are learning a lesson, and so is the sociopath. They are both learning lessons as souls. So there needs to be that variety of different situations on the earth for us to all interact, because we're all learning off of each other from various things. And then also, like I mentioned prior, there is like source, like light source, and then there's lower vibrations in the universe, the same as there's vibrations here on the earth. So when we're talking about a sociopath being stuck in the root chakra, there is also that variety coming from soul, from source, where there are certain beings that are of a lower vibration. So we're all kind of mingling together here and trying to sort things out, right? So that's why sometimes we'll encounter people that seem really off or just really negative, and you can just feel, or you look into their eyes and you can sense something quite isn't right. And that is also just our vibrations. Either we are a higher vibration of light source energy being, or we can be lower levels of vibrations of beings that have incarnated. So there's that level of things too. There is the level of what kind of source you are.
Yes, no, this I understand. To a certain extent, we create our own realities. We absolutely do. Okay. But I'm not quite sure at what age, because there is that argument that we create our own realities. Do we create our own realities in this world before we come here? You know, these are the things that I really want to ask, because if you are here and you are incarnated, you absolutely have the ability to create your own reality, and a lot of people do so. So one of the things that I find very interesting about both sets of people, whether it be psychopaths and sociopaths, they have a high degree of self-sabotage. Driving recklessly, drinking, excessive sex, over sexuality, just sabotaging their relationships and stuff like that. That's creating your own reality. And your reality obviously is not going to be pretty at the end of it, right? So at what point in time does the creator look at his creation and said, this is what I intended, or this is not what I intended? Or does that ever happen in terms of the whole karmic cycle?
I think I agree with you that that is something that I talk to a lot on manifesting and creating your own reality and tapping into the being that is inside of this human body. So yes, there is some of that going on, but again, that has to do with the level of spirituality, of being able to tap into that, being able to know that you are of source, right? So I think everybody does, because you know the whole sciencey aspect of it, that matter is affected by energy, right? And everything is made up of matter, and energy affects matter, and we're energy beings, and we have like over 500 worth of car batteries in our being that puts out energy, and we can actually manipulate matter. We have like way higher amounts of abilities if we tap into our spirit than we do on the physical. But in saying that, it's we are doing these things without even knowing that we're doing them. Like, it's like that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We've heard of that before, where if you are constantly in a negative state and saying, this is going to go wrong, and I know I'm going to get sick, or I know this, you know, and it seems to happen, right? So yes, like we are in a lot of ways realities. And this cycle that we're going through, I think there are, I don't even know how to put it into words, but there's, it's not even levels, because levels kind of gives it as a way of leveling up. It's just, we go through this process until we're done, right? Until we've learned all the things that we need to learn. These physical bodies eventually, you know, tire out and are gone, and we go back to source. And then we take some time and we decide, you know, what's our next adventure, right? So it's kind of an ongoing cycle. And I'm sorry if I maybe missed the point of your question.
No, you did answer it. You did answer it. It's just an interesting thing to look at, the creative process, because if we believe in reincarnation and so on, and we're creating our own realities, are we creating our own realities in this timeline or future timelines, or whatever the case may be? And
oh my God, we could do a whole episode on that.
Yes, I realize.
Right, because there is like right now what's happening, I'm just feeling like there is such an overlap and such a ripple in the timelines, where things are very different lately in this past little while, where, you know, time and reality and all of those things are kind of a little more, I don't know if the word unstable is right, but it's fluctuating, where there's overlaps, there's more. We will have to make another episode about this. I'll have to talk, because I could talk on just that alone for a while, because there's some stuff happening out there, even in that aspect of like time and that fluidity of that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, lady, I don't have any more questions for you, but if there's anything that you
I
need to
don't
say.
really have any more for you. I know we more focus tonight on identifying these people. And we were talking after last week, and we had mentioned something about actually having kind of like groups where you can get help with the healing aspect of it. I also wanted to mention before we go, there is a term, I was talking to you about it before, about gray rock. It's a psychological, because,
Yes.
yeah, it's where you become as they're used to using you and manipulating you and getting a reaction out of you, and that's where they're getting that feed. They're feeding off of your energy in that way, in that root chakra where they're just need, right?
Mhm.
So gray rock is a method to basically become rock-like. You can't squeeze blood from a rock. You can't squeeze water from a stone, right? It's just putting yourself in a state where you become the most uninteresting, gray, bland rock for the narcissist or the sociopath, where they are not getting anything out of you. So if they text you, they call you, you do not have to. They train you that you need to reply to them. They have you so worked up that you feel you need to defend yourself. You feel, so even after you've left, they will do things purposely to try and eke at you to get that response. So if you become like a gray rock, where you're just uninteresting, rock solid, your answers are yeah, no, or don't even answer, you become the most uninteresting person. They don't get the emotional response. They don't get what they need out of you, and they can't control you anymore because you're just bleh. You don't give them that feedback.
There is another technique, and I want to say this. Sociopaths and psychopaths, and also to a certain extent the people who enable them. Right, I'm a big fan of Bob Marley, and there's a line which is in one of his songs, and it says, "When the night shall turn to day, a lot of people will run away." So another way of dealing with sociopaths and psychopaths is to just simply shine a light on them and say, "I know who you are. This is what you've done. Tell people this is what has happened. Speak." Because the principal thing about sociopaths and psychopaths is they want to silence you. They want to make sure that you're isolated or silenced, like the narcissist, and they want to silence you. Once you start to talk, then you become uninteresting to them because that light is shining. And there's two reasons why they will run away. They will run away because they think that if this person continues talking, other people might see my cover. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Other people might actually see through my mirage that I've created for them. And the second thing is that if that person sees through my mirage, then I can't affect them as much anymore. They become uninterested and they'll run away. They'll run away from you. Okay? So once you start showing a sociopath or a psychopath, I know who you are. I know what you are. I'm not your victim. This is where it stops. Then
Right.
you become a lot less interesting.
Yep.
But please do that within reason, because when you're dealing with a psychopath, they might actually kill you. So
Yeah,
like
I
for
shouldn't laugh at that because that's very serious. But if you're feeling threatened in any way physically, there are outlets out there, like get in contact with the police, with, there are shelters set up that are very secure. Protect yourself and your children and get out of that situation safely.
Yep.
So that's something too. Like, they go, like you said, to the point of cutting you off from everybody, your friends, your family. You are isolated, you're dependent on them. So this is where reach out to family members, reach out to old friends, explain to them, be vocal. why, you haven't been talking to them. Ask them for help. Never be scared to ask for help, especially if you're dealing with a dangerous situation like this.
Yep. And that ends our segment on sociopaths and psychopaths. Listen, in the future, guys, if you know someone who is going through this kind of torture, that's all I can describe it as, please share the video with people to let them know that there is life after all of this, and give them some hope and help people to recognize what we've talked about. So if you guys have been taking notes, we're going to be leaving the video up. Education is the best way to combat this spreading social illness, because the truth of the matter is the media, Facebook, video games are turning people more into sociopaths and psychopaths, and it's spreading. It's spreading. Okay.
Yeah.
And the only way to combat that is by educating parents, educating adults on how to stop young people from, ruining themselves and ruining other people's lives.
Yeah.
So that's my spiel for tonight. And Lainey, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah. And so again, it isn't hopeless, whether it is whatever situation you're in. The goal tonight was to recognize these signs, so that you can, one, either recognize some of those in yourself and do, the inner work, the psychological work, the spiritual work, to rise, out of that situation, whether you are the perpetrator or the victim. It's all about improving yourself. And like you said, it is very difficult for someone who is a sociopath to, be called out on that. So, I mean, that's a little more rare, but yeah, I just think that that's really important that we focused on identifying that. So if there is anyone that please do share this video. It might help them, because someone who is a victim of a sociopath doesn't realize they're a victim of a sociopath. They are so wrapped up, and their mind is so twisted. And I want to also speak to something earlier where we are talking about with parents and the children and protecting your children. Parents can get in a state where they are so victimized by a sociopath. Do not feel guilt. If you've been so weak and been used by someone to the point where things have been going on, it doesn't matter what's happened in the past little while. What you're responsible for is now, right? Mm-hmm. And moving forward. So another thing that will stop someone from going forward, especially if they have children who have been in a situation, is they're worried for the guilt of themselves. Why didn't I do something sooner? And then also they're scared. They're just scared. So that's what I wanted to kind of sum things up, because there is a lot of guilt involved from the victim standpoint, where guilt on its own can keep a person from reaching out or leaving a situation.
Okay.
So I'm going to go now. Sorry, I just kept going, but there's so much. We could do a part 3 on this.
All right. Thank you so much for coming out, Lainey. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.